Maybe get a real job instead of playing on computers all day, my neighbor yelled over the fence. Some of us do actual work. 3 months later, his bank called me in as an emergency cybersecurity consultant. Turns out, their entire system had been hacked. He worked in accounts. The question wasn't whether George Hartman would recognize me when I walked into that conference room, it was whether he'd connect the dots between the lazy millennial next door and the person holding his bank's entire future in my hands. I'd been living in the suburban Minneapolis neighborhood for exactly 6 weeks when George decided to make his opinions known. It was a Saturday morning, 7 a.m. sharp, because apparently that's when real workers started their home maintenance. I was on my deck, laptop open, responding to a critical security breach for a Fortune 500 client in Tokyo. Must be nice, he'd said, leaf blower in hand like a weapon of suburban warfare. Rest of us have to shower and commute to actual offices. I'm working, I'd replied without looking up. The breach was sophisticated, someone had found a zero-day exploit in their payment processing system. Every second counted. Sure you are. He'd laughed, the kind of condescending chuckle reserved for parents catching kids in obvious lies. What is it today? Facebook? Twitter? My teenage daughter does the same thing. Calls it being an influencer. My fingers flew across the keyboard, isolating the breach, implementing emergency protocols. In Tokyo, 50 million customers' financial data hung in the balance. It's cybersecurity, I said absently, more focused on my screen than him. Cyber what? Another laugh. Is that what they're calling video games now? George Hartman, I'd learn later, was 53 years old, worked at Midwest Commerce Bank for 25 years and believed the world divided neatly into 2 categories, real workers who wore ties and went to offices and everyone else who was destroying America. Look, kid, he'd said, and the kid rankled given I was 32 with 3 advanced degrees. I get it. Your generation thinks everything can be done on a computer. But real work, banking, finance, managing people's actual money, that takes presence. Responsibility. You can't protect anything important from your pajamas. I was wearing cargo shorts and a DEF CON t-shirt, not pajamas, but pointing that out seemed futile. The Tokyo situation had just escalated, the hackers were attempting to exfiltrate data. I need to focus, I said. Sure. Focus on your cyber thing. Air quotes around cyber. Meanwhile, I'll be doing actual work that matters. Someone breaks into my bank, we don't call computer boys. We call the FBI. He'd started his leaf blower then, drowning out any response I might have made. Not that I had time for one. The next 4 hours were a blur of code, callbacks to Tokyo, and coordinated responses with their internal team. We saved the data, identified the hackers, and prevented what could have been Japan's largest financial data breach. My payment for those 4 hours? More than George Hartman made in 6 months. But he didn't need to know that. The next 3 months established a pattern. George would see me on my deck or through my home office window and find ways to comment. Still playing computers, became his standard greeting. He'd regale anyone who'd listen, the mailman, other neighbors, the landscaping crew, about the lazy millennial next door who thinks typing is a job. His wife, Linda, was kinder but clearly influenced by his opinions. Maybe you could show George what you do sometime, she'd suggested once, bringing over cookies. He just doesn't understand the computer stuff. I'd be happy to, I'd said. But George wasn't interested in understanding. He had his worldview, real work happened in offices, wore suits, kept regular hours. Anything else was generational laziness, participation trophy nonsense, the downfall of American work ethic. He particularly enjoyed contrasting our lifestyles. Heading to the bank, he'd announce loudly whenever he saw me. You know, where we keep actual money safe. Not like that crypto funny money you computer types play with. I didn't bother correcting him. Didn't mention that I'd been hired by the Department of Defense to help secure their financial systems. Didn't point out that computer types like me were the only thing standing between his actual money and the thousands of cyber attacks targeting financial institutions daily. Pride's a funny thing. His was built on decades of doing things the right way. Mine was built on knowing I could dismantle his entire industry's security infrastructure over lunch. So when my phone rang on a Tuesday morning, Midwest Commerce Bank on the caller ID, I almost didn't answer. Almost. Am I speaking with Adrian Cross? The voice was panicked, professional panic, the kind executives use when everything's on fire but they're trying not to scream. Yes. Mr. Cross, this is Patricia Nguyen, Chief Technology Officer at Midwest Commerce. We have a situation. Are you available for immediate consultation? I closed the exploit analysis I'd been working on. Define situation. Complete system compromise. Every server, every backup, every customer record. They're demanding 50 million or they release everything: account numbers, social security numbers, transaction histories. 400,000 customers. When did the breach occur? We discovered it 2 hours ago, but logs suggest they've been in our system for weeks. Please, Mr. Cross. I know your reputation. I know you typically work with larger institutions, but I'll need complete access. No restrictions, no pushback from management about methods. Anything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Should I tell security? I know where you are. I'd driven past Midwest Commerce Bank every day since moving to the neighborhood. It was George's pride, a gleaming 20-story testament to traditional banking. That's what real business looks like, he told me once. Not some app on a phone. I dressed carefully. Not the usual cargo shorts and hacker conference t-shirts, but not a full suit either. Dark jeans, a blazer, boots that could pass for business casual but still let me move if I needed to. Looking too corporate would slow me down. Looking too casual might trigger unnecessary resistance. The bank's lobby was chaos masquerading as calm. Customers conducted normal transactions while employees moved with the telltale urgency of suppressed panic. Security guards stood at attention, trying not to look like they were preparing for a run. Patricia and Gwen met me at the executive elevator, a slight woman with tired eyes and the look of someone watching their career evaporate. Thank you for coming. I've set up a command center on the IT floor. My team's been isolated pending investigation. We don't know if this was internal. It wasn't, I said as we rode up. Internal wouldn't be this sloppy. They wanted you to find it. Sloppy? They have everything. They have what you think is everything. There's always more. The IT floor was a graveyard of cubicles and dark screens. In a conference room, 5 executives sat around a table laden with phones, laptops, and the detritus of panic: coffee cups, energy drinks, someone's forgotten sandwich. Everyone, this is Adrian Cross, Patricia announced. He's the specialist I mentioned. I scanned the faces: CEO, CFO, Head of Security, VP of Operations, and George Hartman, Senior Account Manager. His face went through a spectacular journey. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, and finally, a kind of horrified understanding. You, he said. Me, I agreed, setting up my laptop. Patricia, I need network access. George, get me a list of all access points to your financial systems, employee logins, third-party vendors, maintenance contracts. Everyone else, unless you're providing specific technical information, please leave. Too many cooks. The CEO bristled. Now see here. Mr. I glanced at his nameplate. Davidson. In approximately 6 hours, your bank will cease to exist. Every customer will flee, FDIC will step in, and you'll be remembered as the man who lost Middle America's money to hackers. Would you like to debate protocol or let me save your bank? He left. They all left except Patricia and George, who seemed frozen. Access list, I reminded him. Now. His hands shook as he logged into his terminal. I was already deep in their system, following digital breadcrumbs. The hackers were good, very good. But everyone makes mistakes when they're trying to be clever. How? George started. Questions later. Work now. I pulled up their network architecture. Patricia, when was your last security audit? 6 months ago. We passed with flying colors. Who conducted it? SecureNet Solutions. I laughed, short and bitter. They've been compromised for a year. Every client they've audited has backdoors. You weren't hacked, you were pre-hacked. George finally found his voice. We've used SecureNet for 5 years. They're established, professional, they're a front. Legitimate business purchased by cybercriminals, kept running normally while installing access points for future exploitation. I pulled up code on my screen. See this? This is their signature. I've seen it in 12 breaches this year. 12? Patricia paled. Why hasn't anyone? Because admitting you got hacked is bad for business. Everyone pays quietly, hopes it goes away. More code flashed across my screen. Except they hit too many at once. Got greedy. Started a pattern. Can you stop them? George asked quietly. I can do better. I can catch them. I opened multiple terminals, fingers flying. But I need complete silence about what I'm doing. They're watching your response, measuring panic levels. If they sense real resistance, they'll burn everything and run. For the next 4 hours, I worked. Not the careful, methodical approach they expected, but the aggressive, unconventional tactics that made my reputation. I didn't just defend, I attacked. Turned their own tools against them, traced their connections, identified their servers. George stayed silent, watching. His world, the solid, traditional, tie-in office world, crumbling as he realized how vulnerable it had always been. Every safeguard he trusted, every security measure he believed in, meant nothing against enemies who didn't play by his rules. Got them, I said finally. 3 individuals. Operating out of Romania but routing through Canada. I have their real identities, their bank accounts, their entire operation. How? Patricia breathed. They made one mistake. Used the same crypto wallet for multiple ransoms. Crypto's not as anonymous as people think when you know where to look. I compiled the data into a package. FBI will want this. So will Interpol. What about our data? George asked. Already secured. I've isolated their access, removed their backdoors, and I smiled slightly, transferred their ransom wallet to the FBI's cybercrime fund. All 43 million they'd collected from other victims. 43 million? George's voice cracked. Your bank would have been number 13. I started packing up. Patricia, I'm implementing new security protocols. Your team can maintain them once they're cleared. Should have you operational by morning. Mr. Cross, Patricia started. Your fee? Standard rate. I'll send an invoice. I looked at George. Might want to call the FBI now. They'll want to move fast on those identities. I left them there, George still staring at his screen like it might bite him. The traditional banker, faced with the reality that his entire industry existed at the mercy of people who played on computers, it took 3 days for him to knock on my door. I was on the deck, laptop open, working on a vulnerability assessment for the Pentagon. Another day, another critical system to protect. Adrian, he said. No kid, no condescension. Just my name. George. I owe you an apology. No, I said, still typing. You owe me understanding. He stood there, uncomfortable in jeans and a polo, his weekend warrior outfit. The bank would have been destroyed. Yes. Everything I spent 25 years building, protecting, it was all vulnerable. Everything's vulnerable. The question is who's standing guard. I finally looked at him. You were right about one thing, I do play on computers all day. But it's not a game. It's war. Every day, thousands of attacks on every system you trust. Power grids, water treatment, hospitals, banks. And the only thing stopping them is people like me. I didn't understand. You didn't want to understand. It was easier to believe the world still worked the way it did in 1995. I gestured to his house. You have a smart home system. Connected doorbell, thermostat, security cameras. Did you change the default passwords? His silence was answer enough. I could access your entire house from here. Watch your cameras, control your locks, listen through your devices. Not because I'm some movie hacker, but because you trusted technology you didn't understand. Could you help me secure it? I could. But will you listen this time? Or will you go back to thinking it's all silly computer stuff once the fear fades? He sat down heavily on my deck chair. Linda left me. I hadn't expected that. I'm sorry. Said I'd become insufferable. Always judging, always knowing better. Said I was so busy protecting the past I couldn't see the future. He laughed bitterly. Turns out she was taking online classes. Coding. Said she was tired of being left behind. Smart woman. I called you lazy. Said you weren't doing real work. He met my ice. You saved 400,000 people's life savings. From my pajamas comment. I'm sorry. Cargo shorts, I corrected. I was wearing cargo shorts. That got a small smile. The FBI said you're one of the best in the world. Said we were lucky you lived nearby. Geography had nothing to do with it. I work globally. But yes, you were lucky I answered the phone. Why did you? After everything I said. I closed my laptop, gave him my full attention, because the 400,000 people whose data was at risk didn't deserve to suffer for your ignorance. Because Patricia Gwynn is a good CTO trying to protect an institution that we ain't invest properly in security. Because despite your attitude, you genuinely care about your customers. How could you know that? Your password. I smiled at his alarm. Relax, I only saw it because you typed it during the breach. It's your daughter's name and birth date. Terrible security, but it tells me you're human. Humans make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them. Will you teach me? I'll pay your consulting rate. I charge $1,500 an hour. He swallowed hard but nodded. Worth it. No charge for neighbors, I said. But you'll owe me something else. What? Next time you see someone working differently than you expect, ask questions before making judgments. The kid delivering groceries might be funding their startup. The woman walking dogs might be a novelist. The guy on his laptop might be preventing global catastrophe. Deal. He stood to leave, then turned back. Adrian? The hackers, what happened to them? Arrested yesterday. Romania's cooperating with extradition. They'll face federal charges. Because of you. Because they got sloppy. I just noticed. He started to walk away, then stopped. The FBI agent said something. Said you turned down their job offer 3 times. Said you could run their entire cyber division but you prefer working from your deck. I like the flexibility, I said. Playing on computers, he said, but this time with respect. Saving the world in cargo shorts. Someone has to. The next morning, I woke to find a package on my doorstep. Expensive scotch and a note, for the next time you save the banking industry. Or just because it's Tuesday. Your grateful neighbor. I was pouring a glass that evening when my phone rang. Unknown international number. Adrian Cross. Mr. Cross, this is the European Central Bank. We have a situation. I looked at George's house, where he was attempting to change his smart doorbell password with a YouTube tutorial. He saw me watching and waved, no judgment in the gesture. Send me the details, I said into the phone. I'll handle it. Because that's what we do, those of us who play on computers. We stand guard at the digital gates, protecting a world that's only just beginning to understand how vulnerable it really is. One hack at a time. One neighbor at a time. One saved institution at a time. From my deck, in cargo shorts, drinking excellent scotch. Real work indeed.